The sun was shining. The park was full of laughter, and two children were quietly building their perfect little sandcastle. But their peaceful moment shattered in an instant when a boy stomped in and crushed their creation with a mocking smile. The girl burst into tears, but the protagonist stood up for her and demanded the boy remove his foot from the sand. His calm but firm tone made the bully hesitate. In a swift move, the protagonist kicked him in the face, knocking him down. As the bully realized he was bleeding, his anger turned into fear, and instead of fighting back, he started crying and ran away. A little later, the same bully returned, now with his older brother. The older one demanded to know if the protagonist had hurt his brother, but got no response. Annoyed, he tried to touch him, but the protagonist dodged every move with ease. When the moment was right, he kicked him hard, surprising everyone. The younger bully protested again, but the protagonist calmly admitted that even though he never trained officially, he'd always been a natural troublemaker. Years passed, and now in 5th grade, the protagonist was stopped by a group of older students outside school. One boy tried to act friendly but was clearly up to no good, leading him into a suspicious alley. The protagonist kept a promise just to protect someone's feelings, not realizing the truth behind their pain. Time moved on, but the fire in his heart never faded. In high school, a boy stormed in looking for a fight. He kicked the protagonist hard into the wall, mocking him and demanding money. Though furious, the protagonist held himself back, apologized, and took the humiliation quietly, knowing this wasn't the right time to fight back. At home, his mother noticed something was off, but he smiled and said school was great. All he wanted was to keep her happy, no matter what. But peace didn't last. A line of black cars stopped outside their restaurant. Men stepped out holding a funeral photo. His mother saw it and collapsed in shock. That moment changed everything. Years passed. At Yongjin High, whispers spread about a new student. When he entered, the girls were drawn to him, and some boys at the back recognized him right away. As he walked to his seat, he sensed eyes on him. One boy beside him gave him a twisted smile, hinting that trouble was far from over. The classroom had calmed down, but the tension hadn't fully left. The protagonist, though dozing off, still held on to his father's advice: never let anyone step on you. Moments later, the blonde boy returned and was surprised to see the bullies gone. He quietly took his seat while Seth looked like he was back to sleep. The class representative tried sneaking glances at him, curious but cautious. Meanwhile, the blonde boy avoided eye contact and closed his eyes again. In another part of the school, the defeated bullies were being scolded by a much larger, more intimidating boy. He questioned how they lost to a new student. One of them, with a bandaged nose, nervously tried to explain how something had changed in that boy, remembering clearly how Seth had taken them down with just one move. The big guy, clearly unimpressed, stormed off toward the classroom. Peering through the window, he barged in, wanting to know who the new student was. The class fell silent. The representative's expression showed she recognized the intruder. Nathan pointed to the boy beside Victor, saying he was the one. The big guy walked straight up to Seth, trying to talk to him, but Seth barely responded, still half asleep. This only made the big guy angrier. He introduced himself as Goblin from Young's High and stared at Seth's face, slowly recognizing him. It hit them both. They'd met as kids. Goblin was the same bully who once destroyed the protagonist's sandcastle. But instead of anger, Seth greeted him like an old friend, asking about his brother. Goblin, suddenly pale and sweating, rushed out, ignoring Nathan's confusion. Outside, Goblin made a mysterious call to his older brother. Inside the room, the protagonist and the class rep both felt something was about to change, though neither could explain why. In the open weight match, a confident man brags about nearly qualifying, claiming he only lacked one more fight. But behind him stands a towering boy, radiating a heavy, unsettling pressure. Despite all his loud talk, the man doesn't last long and is quickly taken down. The crowd watches in shock as the fight ends faster than expected. Afterward, the competitor, exhausted, heads to the locker room. Just when he's settling down, a familiar face shows up: Goblin. Without wasting time, Goblin brings up a haunting memory, the return of a powerful boy who once defeated both of them in their younger days. The moment hits hard, shaking him to the core. Elsewhere, at school, two boys are sent to the counselor's office for sleeping in class. The teacher asks one about his upcoming matches, but he hasn't even registered. He then turns to the other and finds out he's not part of any team, which disappoints him. Back in class, the boys simply lie down and sleep again. Later, word spreads that Brock is back on campus. Everyone's alert. When one of the boys runs into him, Brock grabs his shirt, mocking him. But the boy doesn't back down. He throws a strong punch and follows it up with more. Brock grabs his neck, clearly stronger, warning that he could finish this easily. Just then, a teacher spots the fight. The scene ends with quiet tension as another boy watches everything, unaware that it's all connected to him. The protagonist stood silently at a grave, staring at the photo with heavy thought. A tall man approached, holding an umbrella, and gently urged him to leave the cult. Curious, the protagonist asked about his father. The man revealed that his father became the strongest man in Korea using only his fist. When he asked about his mother and why no one was around, the man explained that his older brother always looked after him. Despite being busy, his father would often skip work just to see him. The man's final message from his father was simple: never let anyone push him around, as it would bring shame. They recalled silently watching him get bullied, unable to step in. Back at school, the atmosphere shifted as the student council president arrived. Students grew nervous while two troublemakers slept. One girl admired the president's presence while her friend thought about changing classroom. The president asked about the new student, sparking confusion. The protagonist, still half asleep, made a loud entrance, catching everyone's attention. When asked to follow to the council room, he insisted on speaking right there, which annoyed the president. Still, he was led away, with Victor waking up in confusion and quickly catching up. The class representative watched worriedly, and the protagonist tried to reassure her with a small smile. Inside the council room, tension rose as Jason, the president, questioned them about someone named Brock Chong. Neither of them understood at first, but Victor slowly recalled a fight from the day before. Jason revealed that their school once trained top athletes from across the country, until Brock's behavior destroyed that legacy. Now Brock was back and looking for someone. Suspicion grew, and everyone wanted to know what connection the new student had to this dangerous return. Back in the student council room, the story behind an old school incident is revealed. Years ago, the protagonist witnessed how one student, once known for being fierce and uncontrollable, caused chaos. Many students were suspended, including athletes with promising futures, and one who was even set to join the national team lost everything. The situation turned worse when the school lost its sponsors and slipped into being an ordinary institute. Surprisingly, the only reason that student wasn't fully punished was because a teacher stood up for him and guided him to a better path by introducing him to a team. While one of the council members loses interest, the president insists the reason for returning was connected to him. This creates tension. The protagonist still doesn't understand the meaning behind these hints. After school, as he and another student head out, the class representative is seen waiting outside. Her presence draws a playful smirk from the boy beside him. She gently checks if the protagonist is all right, and while he responds calmly, her real reason for waiting becomes clear. She nervously asks if he remembers her. He does, but only as the class representative. Frustrated, she reminds him of their childhood. When he finally recalls their time at spring daycare, playing together, sharing laughs, even a childhood kiss, she smiles softly. But his casual way of mentioning it hurts her. She asks if he thought she waited all this time just to hear that. Before he can explain, she walks away with the others, leaving him alone. As he walks off, he quietly smiles, lost in memories of their childhood. Reaching his car, he finds his driver asleep again. Waking up startled, the driver asks if he should pass by the protagonist's mother's restaurant. The protagonist simply says no. While standing near the entrance, the protagonist quietly watches the scene from afar. Inside the council room, the atmosphere grows tense as the president asks everyone to avoid direct conflict with Brock. This suggestion annoys Gabe, who questions why they should back down. Sam calmly reminds him that since Brock represents the nation, he won't pick random fights. But Gabe's anger only grows. He blames Brock for the downfall of their once famous athlete school. When the president calmly says nothing can be done, Gabe loses control, kicks his chair, and shouts that he'll reclaim everything Brock took from him, no matter the cost. Elsewhere, Goblin sneaks into the protagonist's room and wakes him gently, insisting they talk outside. Though still sleepy, the protagonist agrees. As they walk through the hall, Victor silently watches them, while Sophie starts to worry. Out in the schoolyard, Brock easily defeats all the students Gabe had gathered. Bored, he mocks them. Gabe charges in with a powerful kick, but Brock easily blocks it and slams him into the ground. Standing over his unconscious body, Brock cruelly threatens to make sure he'll never walk again. Just then, the council president steps in and stops him. Brock admits he has no problem with the school and only came to meet someone new. Jason, the president, warns him to keep the peace, but Brock, looking down on Jason's status, claims he's still stronger. Jason firmly reminds him that his actions could drag the whole school into trouble. At that tense moment, the protagonist arrives with Goblin. He immediately realizes that this is the same Brock everyone has mentioned. As Brock approaches him with clear intent, the protagonist prepares himself, clenching his fists despite shaking. Right before things explode, Jason steps in between them, halting the clash. After Seth lands a brutal punch to the protagonist's face, the students are left in shock. Seth continues to strike relentlessly until the teacher intervenes and orders him to stop. The protagonist, covered in blood, asks again if he still seems weak. Later, at Sunshine Hospital, Brock is recovering from his injuries, bandaged up and resting. The teacher informs him that while they managed to fix his nose, he has a skull fracture and broken rib. Barack is warned about his injury and the trouble he's caused. Unfazed, he dismisses it, stating that he's found something far more interesting than wrestling. Back at school, Seth's presence makes everyone uneasy. His mere sight heightens the tension among the students as they fear what he might do next. In the bathroom, Seth overhears a conversation where some boys express disbelief over how he defeated Barack. As he walks through the corridor, he approaches them and calmly asks them to step aside, making them drop their cigarettes and leave. Meanwhile, Victor, still angry over his humiliating defeat by Seth, challenges him to a boxing match, determined to prove himself. Victor trains intensely, remembering his defeat. A man advises him to switch to MMA, but Victor refuses, staying focused on his goal to become a world champion. At school, he finds Seth, who is still tired from his work and didn't show up for their earlier fight. Annoyed, Victor attempts to attack Seth, but the protagonist effortlessly deflects his punches, showing his unmatched strength. The fight intensifies, but it remains interrupted when a student walks in, forcing Victor to back down for now. Victor and Seth have been avoiding eye contact throughout the day until Sophie arrives, calling Seth to lunch. He eagerly agrees, but Sophie is confused by his excitement. As they return to the classroom, they find Victor asleep, and Seth soon follows while Sophie sits at her desk. Later, Victor calls Seth to follow him, and they leave the school, entering a black car. The driver asks where they should go, and they head towards Victor's boxing gym. The driver waits outside while men from earlier arrive, armed and ready. Inside the gym, Victor challenges Seth to a fight, revealing his interest in him since his transfer. Seth teases him, but Victor, irritated, removes his gloves and charges at Seth. Before they can clash, Victor's coach interrupts them, asking about the men outside. Seth learns from the driver that the armed men intended to attack the gym. It turns out they were after the coach's gym because of unpaid debt. Seth and his uncle discuss what to do next. While at school, Victor's absence raises suspicion. When he returns, he confronts Seth, showing an envelope revealing his family's debts were paid. Seth questions Victor, but the confrontation leads to tension, with Victor angered by Seth's involvement. Seth reminds Victor of his father's promise and leaves, leaving Victor disturbed. Back at school, Sophie is concerned for Seth, while the council president watches them with annoyance. Meanwhile, a gang leader named Meduki Ryushin expresses disappointment in one of his subordinates, Derek. Seth, still processing the chaos around him, finds himself in the middle of a bizarre situation as people from various sports clubs approach him. Everyone's intentions are unclear, and even though he tries to keep his cool, it's clear they're all trying to recruit him. Sophie steps in, trying to restore order, but it's no use. More people crowd around Seth. Amidst the confusion, a teacher arrives, but the situation only escalates when he insists Seth join a club, assuming he's just being difficult. Seth, unfazed, asserts that he has better things to do. Tensions rise as the teacher leaves, and Seth, growing tired of the distractions, asks for some peace. Outside, Jason, harboring his grievances, conspires with a group of boys in an abandoned building. He enlists their help to deal with Seth. Later, as Seth heads to his car, he's ambushed. The attackers are relentless, but Seth, despite his injuries, stands his ground. As blows are dealt, Seth dodges and counters, proving he's no easy target. One by one, the attackers fall. Even when armed with bats, they're no match for Seth's skill and quick thinking. In the final moments, Seth, covered in blood, faces off with the remaining foes, his determination unwavering. The next morning, the protagonist sits at her desk, clearly disturbed by what she witnessed the night before. She glances toward the boy, but before she can approach, his car pulls up. He arrives with his uncle, who doesn't press for answers but insists on assigning bodyguards, despite the boy's claims that nothing happened. The visible cut on his face says otherwise, and though they argue briefly, the boy shuts it down, asking him to let it go. Still, his uncle warns him about rising tensions with Buzen and Pon's leaders and urges him to stay alert. In class, his sudden entrance surprises the girl. A classmate mocks him about the previous fight, even after he explains it was 11 against 1. Soon, a school-wide announcement calls him to the principal's office. His friend warns him that Jason, whose father owns the school, might be behind it. As he enters, Jason is already there, smirking. The principal accuses the boy of multiple offenses and declares his expulsion. But instead of reacting, the boy calmly makes a phone call. Within moments, luxury cars arrive, grabbing everyone's attention. His uncle walks in, hands an envelope to the principal, its contents so shocking, the principal's expression freezes. The protagonist's uncle brings up an important question: who will be the new director of the Young Gene Foundation? He's sure the new owner had someone in mind, but surprisingly, no decision has been made yet. The next morning, the protagonist walks into school and heads straight to his seat. A boy watches him closely, and when their eyes meet, neither backs down at first. Eventually, the boy looks away. From a distance, a girl gathers her courage and approaches the protagonist. She asks if something happened, since he disappeared after visiting the principal. He gently smiles, saying she didn't need to worry. Just then, another student bursts into the room, shouting the protagonist's name. Everyone is shocked by his bold entrance. He accuses the protagonist but runs away the moment the boy stands up, leaving everyone confused. Meanwhile, at the principal's office, The physical education teacher is offered the role of the new principal, an order from the school's new owner. Later that day, in a dark alley, a group waits to ambush the protagonist. But the moment one of them sees who it is, he panics and backs off, furious that he was asked to mess with someone so dangerous. The rest flee, leaving the one who planned it behind, now more curious and afraid. Watching the protagonist get into a black car and drive off only adds to the fear. Later, at home, his mother tries to stay cheerful. But when he asks why they don't live with his father, her smile fades. He gently says she doesn't have to answer, and she promises to tell him one day. The protagonist was lost in a strange dream, imagining someone's spiky hair hurting him. But his peaceful moment ended the second he stepped out of school. A silver van stopped in front of him, and two tough-looking men got out. They told him to come with them, but he had no idea who they were. Just then, the driver showed up. It was Rod. Recognizing him, the men stepped back, clearly nervous. The protagonist asked again what they wanted, and one of them handed over a phone. As soon as he looked at it, his heart dropped. His mother was on the screen, tied up and trapped somewhere. Anger exploded inside him. Without wasting a second, he punched one of them, and before the other could react, he threw the phone as a distraction and attacked. Blood stained his knuckles, but he didn't stop. Grabbing one henchman by the head, he demanded to know where his mother was. He alerted his uncle and the security team, and they rushed to the location. His uncle tried to calm him down, reminding him not to act like those who kidnapped his mother. Meanwhile, Derek was trying to act confident, but was shaken when the protagonist's mother stood tall and called him out. She told him that her son would outshine him in every way. Her confidence made Derek uneasy. In the car, the protagonist burned with rage. When they finally arrived, he stepped out, determined to get his mother back, no matter what waited inside. The protagonist stood quietly outside a cafe with his driver, breaking the silence by calling him over. He shared troubling news. The chaos that had erupted in Busan was actually caused by a powerful underground group called the Yakuza. Angry at the revelation, he cursed them bitterly. The older man, who seemed to care for the protagonist like family, advised the driver to take better care of him. The driver bowed with respect and offered to keep his weapon ready at all times. The protagonist smiled, feeling reassured, and thanked the uncle. Shifting topics, he asked the driver if there was someone who could be placed inside the school undercover. The reason was urgent. The leader of a dangerous group named Madaki Ryushin had set his eyes on the protagonist. They needed more protection, and someone who could act like a normal student was key. Elsewhere, a girl named Sophie seemed distracted while eating. Her father noticed and gently asked if she was alright. She insisted everything was fine, though her body language said otherwise. Later, her father received a call from the student council president, hinting at some problems involving a new student. He grew furious, demanding to know what happened. At the same time, the protagonist's uncle met a woman outside the cafe, the mother of Kang. She asked about her son, and when told he was safe, she smiled and reassured the uncle. Despite the danger, she had decided to keep her distance for the sake of her son's future. The scene shifted quietly as the boy named Seth lay restlessly asleep at home, unaware of what was coming next. The classroom turned quiet when the teacher allowed the next student to enter. As the door opened, tension filled the air. The moment the new student turned to face them, his strong presence sent a wave of fear through the room. Without much emotion, he introduced himself as Brock-chan. His name alone sent whispers through the class, and the teacher had to silence everyone. She then called in the second student. Standing beside Brock, this one introduced himself as Jun Kim. His calm voice and good looks immediately caught the attention of all the girls, who couldn't stop staring. The boys, however, weren't too pleased. Jealousy filled their eyes. The teacher, slightly nervous, wondered if they were truly high school students. She quickly told them to sit at the back of the room. As they walked through the class, many students appeared tense. When Brock passed the protagonist, he stared directly at him. But instead of being scared, the protagonist smiled in a cold, unsettling way. Later, a stylish car pulled up outside. A woman named Miss Akira stepped out, speaking in a different language. She seemed excited to see the protagonist. Inside, the two new students sat next to the sleeping Victor and the protagonist. When the teacher asked about the graduate trip, everyone stayed silent until Jun Kim politely said he'd go. Brock, with little emotion, agreed too. The teacher asked the class to befriend them and left the room nervously. The moment she exited, panic spread. Two bullies stood up. Brock followed, standing tall and intimidating everyone. Jun Kim calmly observed. One bully walked toward the protagonist and Victor. The protagonist stared without reacting while Brock mirrored the same cold gaze.
Victor stood to leave, but the large bully blocked his way. Victor, clearly annoyed, asked him to move. Meanwhile, the new student continued watching quietly from his place, waiting to see what would happen next. The day felt suffocating for the protagonist, who, dressed in a school uniform, asked for a cigarette just to ease his frustration. The driver, annoyed by the request, reminded him that smoking in uniform was inappropriate. He looked down, quietly accepting it, but couldn't help laughing as he watched Rami enjoy his smoke. Kim called him out for being reckless. Still puffing, the protagonist casually asked how things were going at school. Kim shrugged, saying it was full of kids. But the driver was more concerned about protecting their leader. The new student, calmly confident, told him not to worry. Pulling back his sleeve, he revealed a hidden blade, reminding the driver that he already knew who he was. Later that night, a fierce boxing match was underway between two men. The protagonist watched Victor trade blows with a much larger opponent. Victor attacked with growing speed, landing a hard shot to the man's ribs, then followed with a powerful hook to the face. His opponent, Brock, struggled to stay steady. Victor mocked him, questioning if he could even fight. Pushing harder, Victor went for a final blow, but missed. For the first time, Brock dodged. Their eyes locked, and the atmosphere shifted. Trembling with new resolve, Brock rushed in. Victor defended and backed into a corner. Brock attacked again, but Victor ducked and responded with a clean uppercut. Still, Brock stood his ground. Annoyed, Victor questioned if the man could ever land a hit. But just then, Brock surprised him by shouting, urging him to fight back.